Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and today there were two final rounds of voting for the Conservative MPs to decide which two candidates should go forward to the wider membership, with the results of that postal ballot being announced in the week beginning 22nd of July. So at the start of the day there was talk about Boris Johnson being a bit naughty and fiddling the results against Michael Gove. With Rory Stewart exiting the competition yesterday, it was considered that most of his backers would naturally support Michael Gove of the remaining candidates. Not only is he the most moderate on Brexit, but he also has the distinction of being really at Boris Johnson's throat. They had a spectacular falling out during the last leadership campaign, and Boris is known to be out for revenge. Well, the enemy of their enemy is their friend. And so it transpired as Michael Gove came second in the first round of voting today, 2 votes ahead of Jeremy Hunt. Up until now, all Conservative MPs had voted, but today 2 spoiled their ballot papers. I guess they couldn't bring themselves to support any of the remaining candidates and weren't prepared to simply pick the best of a bad lot. But Boris Johnson really doesn't want Gove on the ticket. Not only doesn't he want to debate with someone who is committed to opposing him, but he can't be certain that he would win in a runoff against members. Johnson desperately wanted Jeremy Hunt on the ballot alongside him. And there is a way he could fiddle results to accomplish this. He was so far ahead of the competition that he could easily afford a dramatic drop in votes and still get through. All he needed to do was tell a certain number of supporters, 40 would definitely have made it, to vote for Jeremy Hunt in the final round to knock Michael Gove out. With the way this leadership election has been run, it's an obvious weakness in the system. And I was almost wondering how hilarious it would be. Let's say 100 Boris Johnson backers independently thought of this, voted for Hunt, and end up with Boris Johnson actually being knocked out due to the miscalculation. It would have been truly fitting of this continuing Brexit farce. So I was waiting with bated breath to see the results of the final round to try and gauge if this is what happened. Michael Gove was taking nothing for granted and immediately tweeted a very complimentary message about Sajid Javid, who was the guy who was knocked out in the first round today, with a strong hint that he would get a senior cabinet role in a Michael Gove government. Possibly genuinely meant, but I suspect much more to attract his supporters for the final round. He was also pushing the notion that the Conservative Party members want 2 Brexiteers on the ballot, and Jeremy Hunt, as he campaigned for Remain, no, he shouldn't be there. And that might indeed have swayed support. For people really opposed to Boris Johnson, Jeremy Hunt surely has no chance at all of beating him. He's too much like the outgoing Theresa May in so many ways. In between the 2 votes, various European leaders were of course looking on in horror, as we all were, at the likely government facing them. Leo Varadkar of Ireland reminded the remaining candidates that there will only be negotiations between the UK and the EU, not with individual member states, and that the withdrawal agreement is not up for renegotiation, only the political declaration may be changed. Of course, there's a number of Boris Johnson backers saying, oh, he's going to deliver us a deal that doesn't have the backstop. The EU are very clearly saying, no, you ain't. So as MPs lined up for the final time as MPs, though they still get another vote in the process as normal members, Gove was pushing the idea that the final ballot should contain only Brexiteers. Hunt was pushing the idea that it shouldn't be 2 journalists. Not quite sure how that makes sense. Though describing either Johnson or Gove as journalists is a very generous use of the term. And in the end, although Michael Gove was 2 votes ahead of Hunt after the first vote today, the final vote saw that switch around. Jeremy Hunt won with a 2-vote lead over Michael Gove. The wider membership, of course, now gets to decide which of the 2 should become Prime Minister and deal with Brexit. And I have to say, though, I'll probably watch the debate. I can't really see Hunt offering too much of an offence in that. Nobody will consider him to have much chance against Boris Johnson. And he may be of that mind too, in which case he will have at least one eye on a cabinet post in a Johnson government. It will do his political career no good at all if he believes, A, that Boris Johnson is going to remain Prime Minister for a considerable amount of time. And actually, just on that little aside, there were Tory MPs today. Obviously, they were being quizzed on various things. A couple of things of interest. One of which was saying that the feeling was that Tory MPs were not expecting the eventual winner of this competition to remain in post for more than a year and a half. They were looking at another leadership contest in a year and a half. I mean, I think you could go for not so much 18 months as 18 weeks, quite frankly. And someone else was being asked about, they were supporting Boris Johnson, and a journalist was asking them, about their various qualities. And he said, you know, so what's his Brexit position? And this guy was going, I don't actually know what he would do about Brexit. And he was saying, you know, he was asking all these questions. He was basically, he didn't sound like a backer of Boris Johnson at all. So the journalist eventually asked him, so why are you backing Boris Johnson? He says, oh, I think he's the best person for the job. And, you know, he's the only one who can get us through this. And the journalist says, I assume you don't mean the country. And the MP went, oh, no. I mean for the party, not the country. And then that's the way it is. They're just, they know that it's a disaster for the country the way the party is going. That what they care about is the party. It's really, really bizarre. But anyway, you know, so if Jeremy Hunt does believe that Boris Johnson is almost certain to win it, which I think I would, and, you know, and Boris Johnson will last for a year or so somehow, he doesn't want to be out of cabinet, so it's not going to do him any good if he goes really hard at Johnson and still falls short. Much better to just put up a token defence and a grateful Boris Johnson give him a senior cabinet post. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, it could, of course, be that he decides that staying away from what would be a disastrous Boris Johnson cabinet might be the best course of action, as Rory Stewart has. In which case, maybe he will go hell for leather at the debate. So it'll be worth watching, maybe. What I'm curious about is, did Sajid Javid's supporter mostly opt for Hunt? Because that's what it would suggest. Or was there any other movement in the voting? I also noted that although in the first vote today 2 MPs spoiled their ballot, I'm not voting for any of those idiots, only one did so for the final round. So it looks like one of them thought better of it. But there it is now. It's possibly a tame but maybe enlightening TV debate to come. And then it's just the waiting game for a month. In the meantime, Theresa May has another few weeks to bumble around as a lame duck Prime Minister. Michael Gove gets to be a minister for a few more weeks. Very unlikely to enter the cabinet under Boris Johnson, sorry. But I will be paying much more attention to the much more interesting developments going on in the leadership of Labour at the moment. And finally, I also saw reported that Rory Stewart is holding a little event to thank his supporters whilst he was in the competition. This guy is definitely looking towards leadership later on. And I know people keep saying that he was the only decent candidate, but I still think he was just using sensible arguments to play that long game, knowing that sensible arguments are poison in a leadership contest at the moment. If he ever succeeds in the future, and if he ever becomes Prime Minister in the future, I think the people lauding him now will have to rethink. I'll just leave it at that. But for now, we have the much more pressing and dangerous lunatics to worry about that are still in the competition. So, explosive times to come in September. So I hope you found it interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. Subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.